Hello guys, Oscar here. Welcome back to a new redstone tutorial. Now today we are talking all about piston doors, how to build, well, simple piston doors, but all about how to build them, how to plan them, how to basically just totally understand them. And I know piston doors are hard for a lot of people, and so that's one reason I made this tutorial. And then I also just wanted to show they're not as hard as they seem, at least the ones that I'm going to show here. So join me and we'll get right into it. Now the first thing I'm going to talk about is what defines, in my sort of terminology, a simple piston door, which is what this tutorial is about. So we're making this so that there's no middle layer. There's only 2 layers of pistons, which is way easier than 3 layers, for example. Like here, all 4 of these are all piston doors that are simple in my definition. And this one here, it has this 3rd block here, so I crossed it off. Because once you get that 3rd layer in, or even 4th or 5th or 6th, that's when things get really complicated. So, like I said, I'm going to keep it basic in this tutorial and show fairly easily how these piston doors are a lot easier to build than something like a 3x3. Alright, so where I always start is I just build out in my, well, like pretend there's a base or a house or something here. I always just build out the actual door, and so I know exactly what I want to build. And then, yeah, so that's the first step. And then the next step will be to, sorry, my phone's going off. Then the next step is to figure out how exactly you want to retract it. If you want to do 2 to the side, you might do something like this. Hold on, something like this. Or maybe you want to do 2 up and down like this, or 4 like that. You know, it all depends on what you want to do, but you want to plan that out next. And then the 3rd thing you want to do, grab a block, any block, assuming it's a solid block. I like gray concrete. And you want to make sure you can know what the sequence of your door would be. So I just do this, go through here, build it all out, and that'll be when the door's closed, right? Because it's all pushed together. And then you want to figure out what sequence do you want to do. Do you want to do like this side, then that side, or both together, or even something different? Like maybe you want to go 1. Oops, something's up. Go 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe you want to do something like that. It all depends, but this stage with the levers, that's definitely what you want to do to plan it. And apparently, I'm powering both. But yeah, that's your next step. All right, and then your 3rd step will be to get some kind of an input. If you want to do a button with a monostable circuit, or if you want to do a tripwire, or something else even entirely, you want to link that up to some kind of input. I'm going to use pressure plates here, which are usually fairly easy to understand. And in my opinion, they're a little bit easier than everything else, just because it's right there. You can run it all back to the pistons really quickly. That's what I did over here. And then the final step, see if I can do this on the fly here. Hopefully I can. It's the true test of the redstoner. Is to see, can we get all of these to go and wire them up using 1 input. So first things first, you might as well get this into a dust form. But the biggest thing with piston doors is you don't want them to close when you do not want them to close when you go through and open when you're away, right? That's pretty inconvenient. So what you want to do is actually take a logic circuit. I think I have a tutorial out on these. Maybe I don't. I'm not sure. Either way, you want to take this is called a NOT gate, and some of you may have heard of this. But what it does is it takes an input like this and it reverses it. So right now there's no input and it's on, and then there is an input and it's off. And you need to get a NOT gate so that the door is always closed until it is open, instead of always open until it is closed. So the way I do this is I try and get all of these into one NOT gate, because otherwise you might run into problems with both of these inputs. So pretend this is one gigantic input and turn it all into one output. So I'm going to do this on the fly here. Do that, and then you just want to run the signal into your piston somehow. I'm going to do this with some torches, and it's important to realize that if you do a torch like this, like I just did, you need another one. So let's see. Oh, I might have messed this one up actually because of that little thing. Okay, yeah, I think I did. So instead, I'm going to take an output out of here, like that, and then I'm going to bring it up like this, up like that, up like that, like this, and like that. And that should power both of these. Yeah. Okay, so now this half of the door is completely done. And I messed that up. There. So now that half of the door is done. Now we got to figure out how to do it with the same NOT gate, not a different one. We got to figure out how to wire this up on the other side. So this is definitely not the most compact way to do this, but this is just a simplification to show basically just how to do it. It's a lot easier than something else. Here, I'm just gonna do this really messily and sloppily and just do something like this. Now it's important to realize these don't need to be pretty because they're hidden away. Dang it. They're hidden away underground and stuff, so you really don't need them to be that pretty, but I do like my redstone to be nice and compact. But there we go. So now we can take our floor, extend it out a little bit, okay, put it over here. You can build up walls around this, but see, if we go through here, it works, it closes up again, and then if we go out here, it closes up again. So that's a really simple piston door. That's like the very basics for what you can do with piston doors. I'm about to show some other things that you can do with piston doors. Alright, so for this next demonstration, I have a much simpler piston door, but this should work with any piston door, assuming you built it right. And I'm going to show you guys exactly how to build something using a monostable circuit or a one-tick pulse creator. What else is it called? T flip-flop. That's what I was thinking of. I don't know where one-tick pulse creator came from. But let me build something up and then I'll show you guys how that would work. Okay, so I had to get pretty creative with the wiring here, but once again, it's not about how pretty it is, it's about how well it works, right? So yeah, I made this it's a really cramped hallway. I would never want to live here, but it works for demonstration purposes. But the idea is both of these buttons will both open and close the door. So if the door is closed, both of them will open it, no matter which one it is, and if it's open, it'll close, no matter what it is. It seems pretty clear. But yeah, so the way this one would work is you need both inputs to work, right? This is pretty similar to how both of these sets of pressure plates will both trigger it. Both sets of buttons will. And so you just take these inputs from the back of the block with the button, and they go where I had to really creatively push this down here. Now I realize there actually wouldn't be a floor. There's not going to be a floor in here, so it's a mild design flaw. But what this does is it makes what's called known as a monostable circuit, or like I said before, majestically, a one-tick pulse maker. Which, just to show you how this works real quick, we have a piston with a block on it right here, an input like this, and then a repeater out like this. And the way this works is it'll power this block really fast, but it'll also power that piston. So for just a second, that redstone repeater will take an output from this block. So if you watch this, it creates a little one-tick pulse. And if you attach that to a sticky piston, the sticky piston will actually spit out a block, which is a really cool and useful feature. So, see? And then you turn it off, turn it back on, there it goes again. So, and then if you do this with a redstone block, the redstone block will power redstone dust. So if either of these inputs, they both function as this lever here, either of those inputs will have to spit out the block like this, and then really creative wiring with the NOT gate, once again, remember? And then that'll open the door, and you'll fall into this hole. And then, say you get to the other side, you can press it again, there we go. It works just fine. And that's just one way that you can use a monostable circuit in something like this, but there's also a few other circuits that are really useful. Catch you guys in just a second with that. Alright, so let's say your input is ridiculously far away from your door for whatever reason. Like, say maybe you're in a maze or something, and you want an input to open a piston door for a certain length of time, and it's obviously not going to be in a few seconds. You're running, you're going, and you can't get over, and for some reason you can't just squeeze around it using shift. I don't know why you can't do that, but yeah, say for any of those circumstances, and it's just closing up way too fast, or maybe it's you just want it to stay open for a long time. You want to make use of a pulse extender, and the most common way that I've seen to make these things is using two redstone comparators, putting them on like this, not subtract mode, and then just taking an input like that. And then what that does is they run around, and then they keep comparing signal strengths with each other. And eventually it'll go slower and slower and slower until eventually it just dies out. Mumbo Jumbo actually has a really good tutorial on how comparator works, but I'll do my best to explain it here. So you start out with a signal strength of 15 from the input, right? It goes through there, all the way through there, and then it goes to signal strength of 14. So the comparator takes that 14, puts it out at 14, and it goes to 13, and so on. And it keeps going around and around until eventually the pulse dies out. But this is really good for something like timing. For example, yeah, that would have stayed open a lot longer. And you can extend this by just using more comparators. For example, this one will be 3 times the length. Not sure about the actual timing, but here, like in a number of seconds. But this will definitely go a lot longer like that, which is pretty cool. So, to solve your problem here, instead of having it just do that, you can very easily just put in, well, very easily I say, it's a little bit on the difficult side. If you build something like this, you do that, there we go. And then now, it works the same in reverse as well. It'll in a way, it'll extend the length of the not pulse, if that makes sense. So now we run, and miss the pressure plate. Oh, I built this wrong, haven't I? Just a minute. Alright, my bad. I made a complete mistake there. So it actually, yeah, so forget everything I said about extending the length of the non-pulse, for example. You actually need to make sure that it extends the length of your pulse to get unconverted, if that makes sense. So instead of where we had it, you want to have it between your input and the NOT gate, because apparently I don't know what I'm talking about. And here, yeah, that should work. And so now, instead of turning off for a certain amount of time, in which case it'll just, yeah, nothing happens. It'll just it'll be extending, and then it'll, like, I'm making hand motions, which you guys can't tell. So instead of so it's extending this pulse, right? Yeah, it'll just work better if I just build this up real quick with a lever. So it's extending this pulse, right? And then it extends the pulse for a few seconds. But with that input, it just goes like this. So nothing happens. That was my mistake. Sorry guys, people make mistakes sometimes. So what you want to do instead is extend the pulse, which would extend the time that this is turned off, which would extend the time that these are down. So it should work now. There we go. It runs. Did I make another mistake? I did. Okay, this is apparently not. This is not going well for my image here. Hold on. Let me run a repeater output into. Actually, we don't need a repeater. We can just do that. See there. Now it's powering that block. Now it should work. Third time's the charm. Yes, there we go. All right, and it closes up right nice. Right. It closes up nice behind us. There we go. It only took 3 clips and a lot of mistakes. It's alright. Don't worry about it. And so yeah, that's a pulse extender and how you can use that in a piston door. Next up, let's see, do I have something planned for next up? I think I do. Hold on. Alright, yeah, so I checked my notes. I actually did have something planned, don't worry. Sometimes I forget things, like as you guys saw over there. But this is actually a combination of these 2 elements. There's obviously a lot. I feel like it's also worth mentioning. There's a lot of other elements that you could always put into these, but these are the 2 most commonly used and, generally speaking, the most useful ones. But you take this is a combination of the T flip-flop, which I built here. This is actually another way you can build them, as the piston for reference. And then it goes straight into a pulse extender, which goes into the input, which is the NOT gate right here. So, or not the input. You know what I'm trying to say. But how this would be used is if you wanted to open it, right? Opens instantly, which is cool because the comparators they power almost instantly. Here, I'll show you guys. So yeah, so they are unpowered and they're instantly powered, which is really cool. It's actually it's a cool feature. But then what that pulse extender does is it makes it so that there's more of a delay in the closing. So you close it, wait a second, and then they close. So that's a combination way of doing these, which is really cool. And yeah, so those are just some little things you can do, and you can always do dispensers. You could do note blocks. There's a million different ways you could use redstone elements in piston doors. But I'm afraid that is actually all I have. That's all I have planned for today. So hopefully this is a really helpful tutorial in getting started with redstone piston doors. Not these complex ones. Those ones used a whole bunch of other stuff. These ones are a lot more simple than the other ones, and I also feel like it's worth mentioning this redstone is not designed to look pretty. Like, I did not make this as compact or beautiful as possible, especially right here. So yeah, don't get mad at me for that. This is purely just to show you guys how they work, and and then hopefully you guys can build your own. And of course, the biggest thing to do when you're learning about redstone and new things like that, just practice. That's the only thing I can recommend. Like, seriously, nothing helps more than just truly just practicing redstone. I don't know if you guys were even here when I uploaded this video, but my first ever video on this channel was the basics of how redstone works, and I made it because I didn't know how redstone works. So the very best way to learn like redstone or really any skill is to just practice. So there's a little bit of life advice from Oscar, but that's the end of this video. So I want to thank you guys for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing, that would mean a lot, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later.